Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Spadafora, and I will be hosting this reading with Delia de Santis. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be available on social media. We ask you to remain muted during the entire event and to turn off your video to maximize the quality of the recording. Only the readers and host will have video on. To maximize your viewing, click on Speaker View at the top right corner. Benvenuti a tutti, si noti che questo evento verrà registrato e sarà disponibile sui social media. Si prega di rimanere in modalità silenziosa per tutta la durata dell'evento. In questo momento vi chiediamo di spegnere il vostro video per massimizzare la qualità della registrazione. Solo i lettori e gli host avranno il video attivo. Per massimizzare la visualizzazione cliccate su Speaker View in alto a destra. Grazie.
Okay, welcome everyone. Readers and guests. Thank you, Maria Pia, for the introduction. Greetings. The Association of Italian-Canadian Writers, the AICW, is pleased to present the Books and Biscotti literary series celebrating Venera Fazio. But first, I would like to acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together, as treaty people, we have shared the responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. And now about Venera. After retiring as a social worker, Venera joined the Association of Italian-Canadian Writers, soon taking on several executive roles, including that of president and organizer of national conferences. She was always onto new ideas and ever ready to volunteer. Why a poetry contest named for Venera Fazio? There are many reasons I could mention, but the most important one that comes to mind is her passion for believing in Italian-Canadian writers. And she felt that someday we would have a rightful place in Canadian literature, if we persisted and worked hard to make it happen. Thus, she went on to co-edit 10 literary anthologies, which featured Italian writers from North America, Italy, and Australia. Two of her highlights during her life were the publication of Sweet Lemon's Writings with a Sicilian Accent in 2004. It was the first anthology of Sicilian American writing in all of North America, and later that of Exploring Voice, which features the work of 26 Italian-Canadian female writers. Later in her life, Venera turned more to her inner self and became inspired to write poetry. Most of her beautiful poems are collected in the book, The Fabric of My Soul. Venera was an unassuming person who will be remembered by many for her knowledge, her wisdom, and her creative talents. She enriched us all with an admirable example of a life well lived. And at this moment, I also would like to thank very much Dwayne O'Neill, Venera's husband, for sponsoring this special contest. Thank you, Dwayne, very much. Okay.
Thank you for this, Delia. As you well know, a poetry contest involves the effort of many people, including the judge, who is central to a successful outcome. We wish to extend heartfelt thanks to Pasquale Verdicchio, who selflessly donated his time and expertise to read, ponder, and finally choose our 2022 winners. Thank you. And here is what Pasquale Verdicchio himself had to say about the poems. I quote, "The selected poems are ones that demonstrated an engagement with language and structure that was poetic, meaning that they showed an awareness of language as something that manifested beyond the purely narrative verse and literal meaning. Even in its retelling of events, poetic language is a language that engages more imaginative realms and dimensions of the medium. In my opinion, this composition met those criteria." End quote. Now we happily come to the main part of our program, where the winners will share the winning poem, while to honor Venera, one of her poems will be read by second prize winner Silvia Falsaperla in English and Italian. So without further ado, I am pleased to introduce our honorable mention winner and the third prize winner, Gilda Morina Syverson.
Thank you so much, Maria. And
Okay.
Thank you, Delia. I wouldn't have, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
I'm going first to introduce you, okay?
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right.
Don't worry. Gilda Morina Syverson, author, poet, artist, educator, and speaker, was born and raised in a large Italian-American family in Syracuse, New York. She's the author of the full-length poetry book, Facing the Dragon, and the chapbook, In These Dreams, Everything's Remain Inside. Her heritage was the impetus for her first memoir, My Father's Daughter, From Rome to Sicily. Her second memoir will be forthcoming in 2023. Syverson poems and prose have been published in the United States and Canada, including Conspicuous Accent, a Centi magazine finest stories of the first 10 years, with Sweet Lemons, writing with a Sicilian accent, Sweet Lemon II, Discan, and others. Let's welcome Gilda, who will be first reading the honorable mention poems, Stairways, Doors, and Immigrants, and then the third prize one, Cinque Terre. Gilda, to the mic.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maria. I really appreciate that introduction, and thank you, Delia. If it wasn't for Venera, I would not know all of you. So I am just honored to have won awards in this contest. And thank you, Dwayne, because I know you're on as well. Stairways, Doors, and Immigrants. The neighborhood is empty. Immigrants and homeless look for places to stay. A beaten up white and gray stairway leads to Nonna's front door. Never were stairs there before, only a long pathway down the porch to an entryway. Passing through an unlocked door, my grandmother's not around, nowhere to be found. I stick my head in another opening that leads to the basement. Call Nonna, Nonna. Below, something stirs. A young girl runs by, whirls. I call out, ask her name and where Nonna might be. Noise rises and I head downstairs in hopes to find my grandmother in the packed basement full of old belongings. The clawfoot table where my mother was birthed, bookcases of Italian trinkets, and a red and yellow carretto, statues of saints, framed black and white photos of those left behind. There are shelves of kitchen utensils, knives and forks, extra large spoons for twirling spaghetti, sipping soup. The list goes on. Food housed deeper in a narrow corridor is stored in the back cellar from where Nonna emerges, quickly moves along. I follow her footsteps up the cellar stairs to the young girl, an immigrant child my grandmother has taken in. It's the child that hangs near Nonna, busy preparing the basement for storage and safety. I point to the broken door my grandmother does not see as she quickly backs away from me and down the cellar stairs. I call after her. She does not answer. The young girl, grateful to have a home, I stand next to her by the broken door, wondering who to call and fix the old portal with parts no longer available. And my next poem, the third place winner, is Cinque Terre. One photograph after another. Vernazza, Manarola, Cornelia, Rio Maggiore, Monterosso al Mare, Vernazza again, Manarola again, each village again and again, adjusting light, picture plane, size, color, exact placement, capturing the beauty with every tweak. From peaks where I look down into colorful tones of pinks and brown, light yellows, lime greens, musty orange and ochre, buildings, jagged water pounding against the shore, boats rocking side to side on rough seas, keeping all visitors off ferries, traveling back and forth. Roads stay open for walking and peering down into each village where locals live in tall, narrow houses next to cerulean blue, white, red, and any other color of the rainbow boats that take over walkways, where strangers come and go again. Each photograph is a reminder of the romantic towns and fishing villages on the steep shore in the northern region of Liguria, the Cinque Terre, tucked away in the rugged cliffed mountainous area shaped by isolation of night when sleep fades and takes me back to memories of ancestors in my country and my country of origin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gilda. That was beautiful. And now Pasquale Verdicchio is here. Professor Pasquale, will you be able to get him on the video? There he is. Hi, Pasquale. He was the judge of for this contest. Would you like to read your comments about these two poems that
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Delia. Hello, everyone. Nice to see some of you. I haven't seen you in a long, long time. I've been sort of a hermit, like many of us over these last few years, I guess. Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who submitted the poems, and just to fall back on a typical comment made at these times, but it's of course always true that everyone is deserving of first place. Of course, having to rank becomes difficult, definitely. So about Cinque Terre, what I said about this poem, and in reading these, I mention only one poem, but it also, if some people presented more than one, it also has to do with all of them. And certainly in this one, Cinque Terre visually and linguistically deceptively builds backwards to give a sense of plunging, or maybe fading, memories and ties to a specific landscape. Yet the poetic landscape they construct, rather than fade, makes certain that roads stay open for walking and peering down into each village. The effect is to further lead to back memories of ancestors and, quote unquote, my country of origin. So wonderful piece. Thank you very much for Cinque Terre, which I have never visited. I always plan to do so. Thank you. Gilda,
thank you, Pasquale. That's a beautiful comments, and I'm sure that they're much appreciated.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to welcome our second place winner, Silvia Falsaperla, with her poem, Letter, a Last Summer. And I will read her bio. Silvia Falsaperla is a graduate of the University of Toronto. She has published poetry and prose in Canadian and American literary journals and anthologies. She was one of the winners of the Accenti Writing Contest in 2020. Venera Fazio Poetry Contest 2021 and Venera Fazio Poetry Contest 2022. She has currently completed a first collection of poetry and a hybrid poetry and prose chapbook. She is working on another collection of poetry, as well as a collection of linked short stories. Recently, she received an honorable mention in the Ontario Poetry Society's Provoked by Places Contest 2022. Silvia, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank Delia de Santis, who through the years has done and continues to do a lot for us. I would also like to thank Maria Pia Spadafora and the AICW Executive Committee. I'm going to now read my poem, Letter Last Summer. It is a letter in the form of a poem or a poem in the form of a letter. I can't decide which, but I guess it doesn't matter. It is dedicated to my late cousin, an artist who had two names, Salvatore and Carmelo, shortened to Salvo Melo. It is a poem about death, about life, a sense of place, and I guess much more. Now, I have to apologize that I have misplaced my Venera Fazio poetry book. But I want to say that she is very present in this poem that I'm going to read. All right. Letter Last Summer for Salvo Melo. A summer place you arranged for me inside a courtyard with a terrace on which rest plants burnt dry by the sun, where women hang laundry neatly in the morning, a small art, each item its fold and peg, where inside my rented place I roast tuna and anchovies escape the sun at peak noon. The burgundy diaphanous curtain subdues its force, a sunlit glow in the shade of the siesta. At the end of the street, fishmongers are few, as the old fishermen have gone. The fish not as plenty, but fresh from the sea, their scales shimmer and their mouths open. The market tables laden with grapes, melons, eggplants, and tomatoes, their shape and color as the island intended. Close to Agatha's domus, grand and baroque, embracing the square, with the lava stone elephant fountain, the dwarf fountain, the dwarf elephants brought in from Africa long ago. There on the road by the marble balustrade of saints, shaded by oleanders under the July sun, your face gaunt, but as beautiful as Edzar Pound's, the straight nose, the ungular hair, you told me you were spitting blood, and a mute horror befell me for your love of unfiltered cigarettes. You laughed at death in the face, predicting your own with a light-hearted laugh. For one is attached to one's life, the breathing lungs, the seeing eyes, and the thinking brain, the everydayness of life. In those sunny strolls days before, you opened up to me with lines echoed in Russian novels of moral conflict and choice. Io sono cristiano, you said, in the pure sense, a phrase loaded with history and civilization. Just beneath the road we stood on, or Roman baths. You talked about love, the loss of love of a widowed man, searching for the women your eyes gazed upon in the pews of Agatha's domus, in the hollowed silence and incense air you waited for them in the aisles to get up, genuflect, and toss a sacred kiss with bent finger to triumphant Agathe in the heavenly dome above the altar. Women, you said, do not know love because love has wings. Love fills the empty hours in the late afternoon scirocco when the work of fashioning gold with my hands is finished. Knave as any man, when women ask more, you run from them. Eldest cousin, the first from the brood that sprang from an orphan girl, I looked up to you, an artist in the old sense, craft and aesthetics. Your lithograph hangs on the wall, a wristwatch and galloping human feet, time still and time inexorable. Lucky you left this land, you said, of inexorable sun, sea scented to become more, though I suffer the rupture from the place of deep roots and first consciousness. This land, this ancient boot on the map in its islands, you can't ever leave like Ezra, for a green, half-savage country where centuries have shaped cities and towns in marble and stone, and man is the product of his own art, the two index fingers verging to meet in the heavens of a high-ceiling chapel. You didn't leave Sicily for 30 years, but for the paintings of Caravaggio in Naples. Before I die, I want to see Niagara Falls. Before you died, I promised you the cascading, thundering waters, pit of water mist, unceasing and breaking open green land peopled by trees. That nicotine fix, more intoxicating than love, the relaxing puff, aiding thought, refining feeling, color, the form, in your craftsman's hands, the soothing smell of dried tobacco leaves smoldering in slim cylinder rolls between your fingers, the elegant lounge names of Rothmans, Camels, Chesterfield, inhaled between shots of vodka or whiskey, the creative fire in the brain and eye sockets that burnishes gold and shines sapphires, diamonds, and pearls that enrapture rapturous women. Two-faced alchemy over the years, dropping tar into the lungs, charred sponges once pink inside the protective rib cage, the body a vessel of cells. My sojourn at our ancient city I left unfinished for another time, the Greco-Roman theater nestled among ochre buildings, hidden from the street, and the Caravaggio in Ortigia. It will always be unfinished for me, for you were to lead me to the foundling wheel where our grandmother, a swaddled babe, was placed, a decade before the Great War, for you were to lead me to the dusty plebeian street where she housed my family in her cramped but dignified quarters. Endearing the legacy you left me, that as a young boy, you should have an attachment to my own mother, a nubile woman, dreaming of marriage and children, the everydayness of holding her hand in public, the everydayness of eating, sleeping, and waking, the everydayness of promising life, news of your diminishing life, prayers that Agate could not even heed, the strange pit that settles and constricts the gut, disturbing sleep. You soon succumb to death quietly, privately, unceremoniously at year's end, your hair and beard white like Ezra's on the white hospital pillow, a fine poem eschewing excess. Each death is an isolation, as familial faces and voices fade, as branches crumble and roots burrow deeper in silence. I will only have my known and unknown city to reclaim in the end. I will sit alone in the afternoon siesta in a high-ceilinged room, the burgundy diaphanous curtain subduing the sun, the binding sun not forsaking me. There will be emptiness and the hollow sound of rupture of long ago. There will be the length of new days, light and shadow to decipher. Thank you.
Thank you, Silvia. So up to Pasquale, please, comments.
Thank you, Silvia. And as with others, I know Silvia through Facebook, which is sometimes becomes an obsession, but it's a very useful place to meet people. You'll notice when we go on to the other poems as well, that we're dealing a lot with memory and perception and nostalgia, but nostalgia in the same sense that we feel when we see a photograph and we try to interpret what we see, who might be in the photograph. Sometimes that memory of the names is lost, but the impression that those faces and places leave with us are all important because they lead us on. They lead us on to a sort of restoration or restoring, as I like to say. Like these poems, Silvia's poems, the restoring the slow and consuming, extinguishing body of what was once familiar. And they suggest how the familiar might fade, taking each one of us closer to what at first appears as a diminished familiar, like in the verse, each death is an isolation. But then leads us on to the length of new days, light and shadow, to again decipher what we remember and begin to piece together these things in a story, again in a poetic language, therefore full of images, but again the stories that this suturing together or this sewing together of images might bring us. Thank you, Silvia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh,
Thanks, Pasquale. Our final reading is by our first place winner with their poem, Refuge in the Garden, Francis Garofalo. Dr. Francis Garofalo of Thunder Bay is a former superintendent of education, a current author, artist, and photographer. She led various research initiatives, and her work was recognized by the province of Ontario. Her research focused on the role of district leaders, the development of Indigenous partnership, and improving student achievement. She served on ministerial advisory board, providing strategic policy advice in areas of law and education. Her short stories, poems, and photographs have appeared in the Association of Italian Canadian Writers newsletter, Accenti magazine, and People, Place, Passages, an Anthology of Canadian Writing, Longbridge Books, 2018. Francis, over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I want to begin by acknowledging, of course, Delia and Maria for all their work in organizing this event, and also the support and encouragement that I have received from the AICW during my writing journey that really began recently compared to all these talented people around me. But the poem that I am going to read today is entitled Refuge in the Garden, and it is inspired by my mother Antonietta, who passed away in 2019. A tiny figure bends over chamomile flowers, gently prying the velvety stems from the damp soil. As she touches the earth, she feels her spirit and strength renew, her lungs filling with sweet perfumes and earthy aromas. She carefully places the delicate flowers and stems in a hand-woven basket, resting it on the weather-worn table by the back entrance. A warm, gentle breeze caresses the northern garden, releasing the pungent essence of mint and the crisp, tart aroma of Melarosa apples. Fruit trees cast elongated shadows on the sun-drenched patio as she ties fragrant herb stalks into bundles, soon swept away to languish in the cool darkness of the riserva. Then summoned up to brew the tisane that evoke the sweetness of summer, la dolcezza dell'estate. Looking skyward, the rosy hues of the fading sun cast a luminous glow on her face, easing the lines etched on her forehead. The garden is her respite from the constant care she provides. She tends to her husband now like she tends to her plants. As the merciless disease robs him of his spirit and memory bit by bit. She lovingly surveys the garden, satisfied with its progress. Always something in bloom, always something to gather or preserve. Sighing, she turns toward the door, casting one last lingering look at the garden before entering her home. She will brew a tisane that soothes his agitated mind. He will sleep well tonight, and so will she.
Thank you,
Thank
Fred.
you.
Well, there you are, Maria Pia. I didn't see you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Lovely poem and very moving. I will pass on to you, Professor Verdicchio.
Okay, thank you.
Grazie. So this poem also touches back on, and I'll mention this at the end, to the honorable mention. Of course, I had no names attached to any of the poems when I was reading them, but it's interesting to see how the links between all of them as well. So the Refuge in the Garden is the most successful in achieving story through poetic expression and delivers it by engaging a variety of different senses, emotions, and mnemonic triggers, all through quote unquote gentle memories and the fragrant sense as in smell and sense, my pronunciation is bad, of what has been passed down by generations. So the generational aspect is very important in this, and how we pass on or take on with us as luggage to unfold as our lives go on from the past. And if I could just jump to the honorable mention, which is Gilda's as well, Stairways, Doors, and Immigrants, that too offers verses of reconciliation that emphasize a generational descendancy and support through the iconic image of the nonna, a wonderful recurring iconic image, the nonna, the mother, and around which the person around whom we gather and collect our stories of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Delia.
I was just wondering if, since Sylvia couldn't find her book, if I should read one of Venera's poems.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
I found the book
Absolutely.
wasn't too far away. Okay, it's called The Fabric of My Soul, in memory of Nonna Venera Donato, 1877-1965, dedicated to my cousin Venera, also Nonna Venera's namesake. My thoughts glide back and forth, the rhythm of my loom, back to Domenico, his firm goodbye kisses, and a year later, our lusty lovemaking, children born, 6 in all, after each of his work trips away from the deprivation of Sicily, unloading cargo in the dockyards of Baltimore. Then war, the rape of our island, our hunger relieved by gnawing on dried carob. We considered pasta, cooked with a handful of beans, a feast. 5 times I tasted the bitter sting of farewell tears, as all but one of our children chose to fill their bellies overseas. Unlike their father, they stayed away. Back and forth, forward to eternity. But first, my final farewells. Soon my cherished ones will be here, where I am weaving my shroud. Each day my heart races faster, yearning to join Domenico, with candle in hand, brightening the darkness of the other side.
Thank you, Delia, for reading this beautiful Venera's poem, and congratulations to all the winners of this contest.
Okay, thank you, Maria P. I think it is me that This ends the reading portion of our celebration of Venera Fazio and our accomplished writers. I'd like to thank Maria Pia Spadafora for her co-hosting and Christine Sansalone, AICW president, who actually was going to be here but couldn't. Something came up at her work. Special thanks to all the readers and to everyone who took the time to join us today. This free event on Zoom is brought to you by the Association of Italian Canadian Writers, a nonprofit organization run by a group of volunteers. We welcome donations at any time. Go to AICW.ca to donate and to find out more about our activities. Thank you.